Hi, class. This week we are all about computer science and how that affects healthcare informatics. So I wanted to go over some objectives real quick on what we will be focusing this week. So the first one, we're going to actually describe the essential components of a computer system. So looking at the hardware, looking at any of the software and what it really entails and why we need to know this information. The second one, obviously recognizing that systems are evolving over time and we need to keep track of the current trends and developments, but I really want you to focus on the tools and how they generate knowledge. And then the third one, identifying the human technology interfaces. So we're going to be talking about some of those hardware and software components that help us interact with these technologies. The last part I really want to focus on this week is learning how computers can support when we're trying to collaborate. So looking at information exchanges. One of the words that we're going to be referencing is interoperability. So the ability to exchange information freely, being secure in the same time frame. So lots to kind of wrap your head around, but I wanted to do a little bit less discussion and more of like just diving into some of these key concepts. So let's look at the first one. We're looking at computer science. So just like the other sciences that we talked about last week, we really wanted to focus on the computer science. So it's really focusing on those main parts. So the hardware, we think of like anything like the physical makeup of the storage units, anything that would be part of it. So maybe it's the case of the computer, maybe it's the monitor itself, the mouse. A lot of those things are also categorized into like an input and an output type of use. So we're going to break that down. I have a diagram to show you the differences, and then also the software that makes up some of these systems. So the software could be how it operates. So you see different operating systems like Windows, Linux, Apple, and then you're looking at also how does it work. So any type of productivity software, like an Office, like a suite, and then also like web browsers. So they're kind of divided up into those categories. So we're pretty much taking all these components, the hardware, the software, and we're trying to help store that data, kind of sort it, analyze it, and then we were able to apply it. So we're able to use some of that information with our already known knowledge about the subject, and so that we can make appropriate decisions. And so that's in a nutshell, trying to gain wisdom from the use of technology. So let's go to the next slide here. So we have computers as a tool, right? We always have this technology. We've been in this information stage for a while. The last 25 years, we've been in this stage where we have World Wide Web. We're beginning to develop how we store and access information and how we make it accessible. So we're actually kind of toward the end, like I mentioned, of this era or this age. And you're probably thinking, well, what's next? Well, we have more of like this experience age. And this slide doesn't really go through the experience age, but you can kind of look that up and you'll notice some trends that you're seeing nowadays where you have people want to have that emotional connection to each other. It's a little bit less about the information and going towards that. It's presenting the real life, who I am, rather than like a profile. And so you're going to see things related to that emotional, like visual. You're going to see chat bots, wearable devices. So you're being able to track things real time. virtual reality. You're able to see what somebody else sees at the same time. So you're getting that emotional connection as well. So I think that's really important to understand where the trends are going so that you can be able to relate to maybe your patients if you're in the healthcare field. So reaching them where they're at, no matter what age they are. And so we've had some good discussions about technology and age, and not to discriminate against age of a person, but to know that each individual might have a different experience. So essentially, looking back at computers, think of them in just that area to storage and process and analyze information. And the way that I've been taught is there's input devices, and then a way that your computer might store them, and then output devices. So how we're able to see that transition. So on the next slide, I'll kind of go over the little details of all those pieces. And then just know that there's going to be varying machines, varying devices that are going to have like things built into them. So they're working on different components. So let's go and look at that. And so if I can zoom in a little bit here, you'll see the keyboard, mouse, microphone. Other things we could add to this list, which you can see right here, is like the touchpad. Lots of other input devices. So you might see like a flash drive or a USB drive. Other things might be like a scanner and a webcam. So it's collecting information, it's scanning it or getting a visual of it. Then it goes through. So it comes into the computer. The computer has a motherboard. Think of a motherboard as the word mother, place where it's housed, like the main circuit board where everything plugs into it. Then you have a processor. That's kind of like the brain of the unit, I kind of call that. So again, another use of the information. You have the random access memory. So think of this as more like your short-term memory. The more RAM you have, the more things that you can do. So you might see different levels of RAM, the more tasks it can do as well. So maybe the speed of it. Then you have a little bit more permanent drive. We call that the hard disk or the hard drive. And that's where you'll see a bulk of the storage. So when we're looking at computers, we're trying to not utilize too much storage because that could slow down the processing, right? Another thing the motherboard might do is supply power to different areas. So different things that are plugged in. So again, inputs, think of everything that you're inputting, typing, video casting, scanning into the computer. The computer will then process that data, and then it has a visibility for us. So we have a monitor, a printer, things that we're seeing, hearing, audio. And so this is pretty simple explanation of it. So you have that output. I'm gonna scroll out. Oops. All right. So again, just to recap some other things that you might see for input devices, joysticks. We use those for computer games. You might see that actually for some therapies. So just because we're using things as like fun, just like our game that we had this week on Moodle, you can also use it for patient outcomes too. So if you're having an education session, you might input different devices to help with that engagement. So those are some of the main ones. Often we might see at the bedside, might see a tablet or personal device. You can go back one more. There are times where we might have to use a digital camera or a video recorder when we're looking at trends, or if something is improving or not improving, maybe a wound care that also has to be secured data. So It can't have identifiers, can't be used outside of that recommended use. So just wanted to show you some of these devices that you might see. Like I said, visual, audio, or multimedia, so a combination of a few. But the most two that you're going to see are probably the keyboard or some kind of touchpad and a mouse. I know a lot of us are not using mouses as much, but you still see that, especially in the healthcare field. For the next one, processing data. So again, going through that phase, we have the input, now we're processing. So some of that software is dependent on specifics. So we might have one key hardware component or the computer monitor. I think you really focus on the monitor because that's kind of like that main visual. You're seeing how that data is being manipulated or accessed. You can see it as you click the mouse on those key areas. So the monitor is very critical for just that visual, seeing how that data is transforming into that information. So one of the articles we had read this past week was talking about blood pressure trends. So seeing that data trending is causing you to look at it from like an information view versus just the raw data by itself. And then of course we have the output. So looking at exit devices. So again, audio could be another one. Even external hard drives. I've seen a lot of use of that. If they don't have cloud storage, they might have an external hard drive to keep up with things there. DVD or other portable devices. So think of those as afterward. Speaking of cloud, I think I'm getting ahead of myself, but cloud storage is kind of where we're at with healthcare right now. Also, with a lot of educational committees that we might be a part of, or even education itself, we're using a lot of cloud computing. So using programs over the internet. If you can think about a few that our campus uses, I can think of like the 360, where you have all your Word products, Excel, all those things you can access by cloud. Also like Dropbox or Zoom, those are good ones that I can think of off the top of my head. Why are we going towards this? Well, we're actually creating less things that we need to store. It can increase the time that it takes to maybe communicate to a patient or communicate to a peer. So we think about engagement tools like patient portals, where they have in charge of them updating their own healthcare records. And so that does save time. Again, we mentioned interoperability, so sharing secured information outside of that main location. So we're able to maybe send this information to another hospital, another place in the community that would be able to use that information to help improve that care. So also it allows bigger data sets to be stored and processed. So if we're looking at bigger picture like COVID trends, if you notice, every time you log into the internet, you're going to see so many cases that are in our area or maybe across the United States. So we're able to store that information. We're able to process things quicker. It's very prompt and it costs less money. So overall, I think that's where we're moving. Obviously, there are security issues that still need to be maintained. And so we will be talking about those security advances and people that need to keep up with it. There might be downtimes for cloud updates as well. So there are always, the positives and negatives to anything, but we definitely have seen a great impact with the cloud computing. So again, educators, scholarship researchers, we're all looking at computers, we're all using them. And I think it's very beneficial to understand them, because we are at that age where we're beyond the informational age. Most everybody is using technology and how we're using it effectively. So yes, it is a tool. And again, in our discussions, a lot of you had mentioned in your articles that we're an intricate piece of that tool. You know, we can help those areas be more productive. We can be more creative, and we can actually use communication software. So again, looking at that software would be ways to connect to other devices or to each other, real time, sharing audio files, screen sharing. Those are a lot of ways that we can communicate to share that knowledge. So again, we're growing. And then of course, using the World Wide Web, you know, we're able to disseminate that knowledge. We need to know how to use it and to organize it so that we can use that knowledge to gain overall wisdom. So if we're not using it to the right abilities, if we're not finding evidence-based practice, if we're delayed in any of those areas, we won't get to that wisdom step. So computer science is like that base of it, and then we are the knowledge workers within it. So the field of computer science is a lot more than I can even explain, but we know that it's growing fast, and we know that we need to be flexible. We need to know that not everything is going to be perfect, but it's not going to go backwards. I'm sure different places are at different stages of where they're implementing things based on their ability to update it, to keep costs down. So we will see varying degrees of how computer science is being implemented or how technologies are being implemented within different workplaces. But we do know that it does help with accuracy. Again, it's just a tool, but the trends are continuing. So again, it's making things more productive. And this is, I believe, our last slide here. So we want to continue to foster these areas, continue to develop. We want those that are in the healthcare field to be a part of this process, because there is a lot of creativity that could occur. And we just want to make sure that we have the skilled users, that the technology is not hindering, but helping. So contributing to the body of knowledge. So again, look over the websites that I have posted. There's actually another a video kind of on the brain and how there's some interfaces with that human connection. Think about how we utilize like different tools and how that benefits our practice, whichever field you are in. We're mostly focused on the healthcare field here. And then just reflect on this week, on all the knowledge that you kind of learned about computer science. Maybe you're going to reflect a little bit more on some of the new things you didn't know. And I think this is just a really good chapter to kind of separate from the rest of the sciences, because this is like the core of healthcare informatics. So we have to start with our tools that we have, and then again, build off of that. So let me know if you have any questions, but hopefully with all the resources this week, you'll have a better understanding of all this. So again, thank you. And let me know if you have any questions.